Howdy everyone, I'm Nicholas Pearson. Today I'm going to go through the breakdown of the chamber really quickly. We've already done all the steps, but I just wanted to talk through each of them. So first off, you want to disconnect the parts to the chamber, like the tubing and the wires. So we've already disconnected all the tubes. They're just resting here on the right. And one thing that I did want to point out is that when you're disconnecting the tubes for the control unit, you want to make sure that you don't just yank them because it's a barbed connection. You want to kind of twist and pull at the same time, and it'll be much easier. So don't just yank them from the barbed connection. And then you also want to disconnect the power. So this is the connection to the chamber, and then this is the power cord to the outlet. So all those things are disconnected, and you'll make sure to turn on this valve pretty much as soon as possible because it takes around 8 to 10 minutes for it to fully drain. Or not fully drain, but drain most of the water within the chamber. For you to get all of it, you kind of have to lift on this side like that to get the rest of it. So you can either hold it, which would take a couple minutes, or you could just rest something underneath it on the right side. And then for the perimeter trough drain, you kind of just have to push the water over here to the side like that, to the drain right here. And there's a tapered plug for this drain, and there's also another one for the bottom of the spray tower. As you can see, I've already removed that, and that can be used to remove whatever's in the spray tower, and then you can also drain the brine tank that if you need to. Like if there's extra saltwater solution in the brine tank, you can just pump it all to the spray tower tank and it'll drain through the bottom of that hole. And then I also wanted to point out the placement of this tube right here, of the siphon tube. You want to make sure it's underneath the float valve like this, so that way it's in contact with the bottom of the tank and you can get the most water possible. If it's over here like free floating, you won't get as long of a duration. But when it's down here like this, you can get around 9 hours of spray time just from this tank itself without having to turn the pump on again. So that's that. And the only issues that we have seen so far are leaks coming from the trough due to the pressure buildup, because we do not have a vent design in our chamber. So to counteract that, right now I'm just either partially filling the perimeter trough, like towards the front, or you could just not fill it at all. Because over time, all the droplets will run down the side of the cover and then into the trough. So the trough will already kind of fill itself, but there needs to be some kind of venting. Otherwise the pressure buildup will just end up pushing the water out from wherever possible. Even though that there's sealant, it will find a way out. That's the only issue we've seen so far. And of course you would take your samples out. You can take the whole mounts out if you need to, or just take the samples out from on top. And then you would move the chamber from here to the side of the counter right there. And you'd be then fully done. So that's that, and I'll see you in the next clip. Okay, so as I discussed with the breakdown of the chamber, after you disconnect all the tubing and you've drained everything, you can move it from the fume hood, as you can see it's empty here, to right here. And I'd recommend to have a person to help you. You can lift it by yourself. It is light enough, but when you're reaching inside the fume hood, you're at an extended position and it's not really good for your lower back. So I'd recommend like one person taking this side, another person taking the other. It just makes it way easier and safer. And this can just rest here. There's no issue with that. And then to the control unit, we finally got our logo on. So this is what the logo looks like. Just painted that. And I wanted to discuss some of the maintenance slash any of the inner workings of the control unit. So right now, the top of the control unit is still removable. And I think we're gonna leave it that way. So I'm gonna take the top off. So this is a push to connect valve. So you can just, you push this and take the valve off the tube. And then once I've disconnected this tube from the air filter regulator, I can take the top off. So I'll go ahead and do that. now we've got a good look at the inner workings of the control unit. So let me turn it around. All right, so there shouldn't be a whole lot of maintenance required, but I just wanted to discuss what you could do if you needed to. So let me push this forward. So the brine tank is right here. We've got labels for the main components, like the brine tank, as I mentioned, the overheat protector. This is the bubble tower, and then the pump is down in this compartment here. Everything is fixed and situated within the control unit, so it's all immovable. It's all bolted in place, all the relays, the solenoid valve, these solid state relays, and the overheat and bubble tower as well. So everything's fixed for transport. The only thing that would maybe slightly move is the bubble tower, because these blocks are held by these little pieces of HDP on each side, and sometimes they can get out of place, but they're easy to put back in place. But right now they seem like they're in place. So any maintenance would be maybe related to the bubble tower. The electronics we haven't had any issue with. We've had no leaks over here. But with the bubble tower, if you were to have to take this out, that would be kind of a task. So to do that, what you want to do is you don't want to fully drain it first out of the drain here on the side, and you can use the pitcher that we have here in the bottom to drain it. So you would drain as much as you could first, and then once it stops, you'd want to kind of take it out more this way and angle it to get even more of the water out. And then once you are pretty sure that you've gotten all the water out, then you can take this valve and pull it through the grommet, and you'll have to angle this up, and these will be like resting on top of the wall. And that's how you can get it kind of free from this wall. But so just make sure that it's drained first. So if you did need to do any of this, that's probably because there was some kind of leak. Like if you hear spraying or leaking coming from inside the control unit, you can be pretty confident that it's coming from the bubble tower. And it wouldn't be really coming from any of these. It would be coming most likely from the heater, because it's not a straight, it's not an MPT thread, which would give a good connection. It's just a straight thread. So it's got a gasket and it's threaded on, and then we've got electrical tape to keep the gasket in place. So we haven't had any issues with this, but if you were to put the air pressure to an elevated pressure, like above 30 PSI, you could have potential issues. But that's why I just want to point out, make sure to not go to a higher pressure. Keep the wall outlet pressure around maybe at least 25 PSI or less. And then to fully take out the bubble tower, you've got some things connected. So there's the overheat protector thermocouple, which you can just pull out. It's right here. So if you angle it enough, you can pull it out like that. And it goes into this little tube that's inside the heater. Fix this. So you'd have to remove that. You would also, this water level sensor is connected too. So you'd have to unthread this with a wrench, and you'd have to unthread the thermocouple with the wrench. And then finally you would be you would have to disconnect this too. So you need to take a flathead to take this clamp off and then pull the tube off. So it'd be 1, the thermocouple, 2, the air outlet tube, and then 3, the water level sensor on top, and then 4, the thermocouple. And then you would be 1 step away from being completely disconnected. You would have to take these nuts off at the end of the heater. You can come. So the heater wires are situated like this. There's a nut, then the terminal, the connection, and then a washer, and then another nut. So you would need a very small wrench, which you can get from the equipment checkout, and it should be in a little plastic clear baggie. It's called like a midget wrench set, and you would just have to keep trying until you get the right one. But that's how you would take off the heater, and then or the heater wires. And then once those are off, there's nothing connected to it. You could take the heater wherever, take the bubble tower wherever you want, and then you could take the tape off and then just unthread it by pulling on these. So that would be a lot of work and kind of complicated, but I just want to make sure to point out how you would do it if you needed to. But there shouldn't be any issues. As long as you're not going over 30 PSI, there shouldn't be any issues. But I would stay around, let's see, I think 25 or less on the wall. So that's that. And then the overheat protectors right here on the other side of the bubble tower. So come around. So it's got a dial. Right now it looks like it's kind of set to around 70 Celsius. This can move on the bottom, but it's pretty situated. So pretty much within line of the middle of this piece of plastic would be where you would set it. So you can just set it by turning the dial. So we can say that's probably like around 70 Celsius. And this will never activate unless the temperature controller were to malfunction or something. As we've shown in the operation video, you might need to prime the pump. So you'd have to take this tube out and just keep in mind, be very careful to not drip any water on the electronics when you do that, if you do need to prime. And then this is just a divider wall to prevent any, if there's any, like some small leak from the bubble tower, to keep it from getting to the electronics. And then the brine tank here, it's removable. It's not really for drainage, it's more of just if there's any leak with it, you could take it out and fix it. But you could also potentially use it to drain the brine tank if you wanted to completely drain it. Because you can drain most of it by using the pump, but to get absolutely all of it, you need to take it out. And then the access panel just threads these four corners. And the brine tank inlet is right here. Got a 3D printed cover, which it sits pretty tight, and this can be pretty easily lost, so just try and make sure that you put it on after you fill it. So everything resides on the cart itself, other than if you move the chamber over here, everything should reside on the cart. So the funnel, the beaker, and then any other extra things will go down here. We've got all of our excess materials down here, if you want to come take a look. And everything should be labeled pretty well. So we've got the GoPro and its accessories, the box of epoxy that we used for assembly. There's not much epoxy left, but there's the epoxy gun. Here's all the painting equipment we used. And then all the spare parts are behind that. We got some scrap HDPE, and all of like the spare fittings and stuff are back here, tapered plugs. Everything's labeled. So you just need to take these boxes out and kind of just sort through it, but everything's labeled and organized. So if there ever was an issue with the fitting, it's like if you needed to replace it or something, we have extras here. And it should all be labeled. So that should be it. Thank you for your time.